Carry a piece of you in my heart. Ain't no robbing that. I've been at the limit with one man.
You're about to accept the music video VMA for the amazing track Bad Romance, and you're in an all meat gown. How do you keep it from decomposing? Hello and welcome to this first ever episode of Chronically Biological, the podcast where we analyse the biological ramifications of some of pop culture's most infamous moments. What I'm hoping to do is combine two of my favourite things. I am chronically online, unfortunately. I do spend more time scrolling Twitter than I do reading papers, which is not good, seeing as though I want to go into a career of academic research science. But I do enjoy pop culture. But I also enjoy biology, don't get me wrong. In today's episode, what I'm going to try and do is combine one of the most infamous outfits of all time and analyse the biological ramifications. Namely Decomposition and Lady Gaga's meat dress. So hopefully episode 1 will be enjoyable and a good taste of what is to come. I'm hoping to have guests on from university friends who do a variety of subjects and are also quite chronically online. So enjoy, sit back, listen, watch, whatever you're doing.
Carry a piece of you in my heart. Ain't no robbing that. I've been at the limit with one man. Dancing in
So first of all, I thought we'd have a look at the history of the meat dress. And you might be surprised to find out that Lady Gaga wasn't actually the first person to have worn a meat dress. And she actually came under a lot of criticism for wearing the meat dress because a lot of people thought she wasn't being original. And I don't think she's ever claimed to be the first person ever drape meat across her body. But yeah, so some of the things that people point out are a Beatles album cover, various artists, including one artist who had a work called Vanitas Flesh Dress for an albino anoretica made by the Canadian sculptor Jana Sterabak in 1987. Actually, even Gaga did a meat dress before Gaga did a meat dress. In an issue of Vogue Japan, Gaga wore a meat bikini of sorts. It was more draped, it wasn't really stitched together that much. And it was on the front cover the year before in 2009. So I guess she references herself. Wow. As for the actual meat dress itself, it was designed by Fran Ferdinandez, and he made it primarily on a corset to start off with, and then parts of the dress had to actually be sewn on behind the scenes of the VMAs. It was actually the third outfit that Gaga wore that night. Obviously, she couldn't wear it for long because it's raw meat, obviously. So a lot of the stitching was done behind the scenes, and it was made from 50 pounds of beef. The designer sourced the beef from his local butcher shop, and he specifically chose cuts of meat that were able to be made into jerky and quite resistant to decomposition. Why did Gaga do a meat dress? There's various accounts of why she did it. The most recent one I could find was an interview in British Vogue on their YouTube channel where she goes through her most iconic looks. And the reason she gives in that video is kind of like two-part. The first part is that it was a joke by the makeup artist Val Garland that she wore sausages to some birthday party. I'll put in the clip here.
So the meat dress, it's actually Val Garland's idea. Val Garland, the makeup artist, her and I worked together for a long time, and she shared a story with me where she had gone to a party wearing sausages. And I thought this was quite funny. And I said, well, that's a great way to make sure that everybody leaves you alone at a party.
And then the second part is the meaning behind the dress, and this is as follows.
We did want to make a statement because at the time they were trying to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. But we decided to do the meat dress because I thought to myself, if you are willing to die for your country, what does it matter how you identify?
Famously, the dress also came under fire from PETA and other animal rights activists who thought that it was a flagrant exhibition of animal murder and animal death. As someone who doesn't eat red meat, I don't get the backlash that it got from animal rights groups, because at the end of the day, Gaga wasn't using the meat for nothing. She wasn't wasting it. It was for a purpose. It wasn't just for fun. It was to make a statement, if we are to believe what she says about it. And I find myself agreeing with this chef that said what people don't like about Gaga's meat dress is they don't like to think of meat as meat. They don't like to think of meat as the animal that it comes from. And Gaga blatantly showed meat in its most natural, raw form. So, aside from controversies, I think it's about time that we get onto the science and get on to answering the question, if you were to wear a meat dress, how should you do it? How should you stop it from decomposing? And how, when you hand share a purse, when you go up to accept your award, as Gaga did, you're making sure that you're not handing share a bag full of decomposed meat. We're all very, very familiar with decomposition, I'm sure. I mean, just over summer, I was living in a place with some people in the kitchen who definitely didn't clean up as much as they should, and the bins overflowed and they weren't emptied, and I'll let you guess what happened. Decomposition. There was flies, there was maggots, it was gross, it scarred me for life. So yeah, I think we're all pretty familiar with decomposition. We've all got a horror story about leaving something out for too long, leaving something in the fridge for too long. But why do certain things decompose faster than others? One thing that Gaga's designer did do well was pick a cut of meat that is particularly resistant to decomposition. It's a cut of meat from the cow that is used to make beef jerky, and it's got particularly strong bonds between the cells in the tissue. That means that enzymatic action and temperature and the breaking apart, turning into mush, is harder to do than, say, a tissue like liver, which has many digestive enzymes in. And if you don't know, enzymes are small molecular machines that break down or build larger organic molecules. Something like liver is involved in digestion, so it's got a lot of these digestive enzymes already present. And in particular, what contributes to the decomposition of meat in terms of enzymes is enzymes known as proteases. Proteases are enzymes which break down proteins. Simple as. When the tissue goes from being living to dead, these proteases that are found in the inside of cells and in the extracellular environment can start to break down proteins that are not meant to be broken down. This is one of the major contributing factors to why meat goes mushy, and why some people say that leaving meat out for a longer period of time makes it more tender. And that's because the proteases and enzymes in the meat are breaking down some of the bonds between the cells, and this is causing the meat to become softer. It's like breaking down the glue. Proteins are like glue in the extracellular space around muscle cells. So enzymes are one huge factor. So if we take a cut of meat that is away from the digestive system, that has stronger glue, the proteins, then we're going to get a meat that decomposes more slowly just because of the way it's structured. The process by which your own cells are releasing enzymes to break down the structure of the tissue is called autolysis. Autolysis just means lysis in Greek, to break, open, auto, self. So autolysis means like self breakdown. And you shouldn't think, oh, this is like terrible. This is something that only happens in dead tissue. This is like a failure of the organism, because autolysis can be very important for lots and lots of processes. And in fact, your cells can commit a kind of suicide by going through an autolytic process called apoptosis. And one fact that always amazes me about this, and I guess it can be classed as meat because we are meat ourselves, is in development your hands form like this first, so all fused. So for anyone listening on audio, I've got my fingers pressed together into a ball for my hand. And when you're going through development in the womb, the cells that are along the gaps of your fingers, in between your fingers, all die through this process of cell death called apoptosis, which involves the breakdown by proteases and other digestive enzymes. And by killing those cells or digesting them, you break apart the individual fingers until you end up with separated fingers just as you need them. And that goes for many things. It's not just carving out your body plan. Your cells always committing apoptosis when anything in your cell goes wrong, and a failure to commit cell suicide, also known as apoptosis, is one of the main causes of cancer. Anyway, that was a little bit of a tangent. What I was talking about was autolysis of meat. So how can we prevent enzymes from breaking down our meat? Well, enzymes are affected by lots of things, including pH, so that's the acidity or alkalinity of the space that the enzymes find themselves in. They're affected by temperature. So that's one of the main reasons why you'd want to keep your meat in the fridge. And the designer of the meat dress actually kept it at a working temperature. I think it was just above freezing, and whenever he wasn't working on it, it was kept chilled. So yeah, if we keep enzymes cold, they have less energy. Less energy means they move less quickly, they break things down less quickly. They're overall just you can think of them as being a bit sluggish. Yeah, so that's it for the first thing that we can consider. So to check off our list of if we're going to make a meat dress, what should we do? First thing we should do is keep ourselves cold. So if we could put Gaga in, I don't know, let's keep her in a fridge. And just wheel her out in that fridge at the VMAs. Sorted. She'd never stink. Then that would do a pretty good job at keeping it structurally sound. So, the next thing that we can consider is oxidation. So you may be familiar with oxidation in terms of makeup oxidizing. If you wear makeup, you'll be familiar. If you stay outside too long, the makeup can turn a different colour from what you originally had put on. If you're not familiar with that, you very much will be familiar with rust. Rust is just oxidation of metals. Now, oxidation isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in meat, it can be a bad thing when oxidation produces free radicals. Free radicals you won't have encountered unless you've done, I think, A-level chemistry. And free radicals are basically just molecules which have an unpaired electron. Now, an unpaired electron is not a thing that you usually find because electrons love to be in a couple. It's their kind of bad romance. So electrons want to be paired. They want to have a partner, and free radicals do not have a partner. They're like uncoupled people on Love Island who are desperately trying to break up a couple to create a couple for themselves. So free radicals, what's dangerous about them is they create more free radicals. So on Love Island, the uncoupled person might turn the head of someone in a couple, and then the two people in the couple turn into single people as well. And all of a sudden, you've got 3 single people when you only had 1 to start off with. That's exactly what this free radical process is like. Because then the people who have now become newly single then do the same thing again and again and again. And this is like a circular process. It's runaway, and it's really dangerous for the integrity and decomposition of the meat. However, there is something we can do. We can add antioxidants. Antioxidants get a bit of a I would say a pseudo-scientific usage in just daily life, because you see them on these like makeup adverts and for moisturizer, and it says this face cream's like antioxidizing. But they are natural. They exist in plants. Plants have many antioxidants. I'm sure humans do too. But what antioxidants do is they provide that electron for the free radical, the single Love Island person, a pair with. So if we provide antioxidants to meat, we can mop up or scavenge, as it's known as in the literature, these free radicals, these single people, put them into couples and stop them from starting this chain reaction. And that's actually one of the main things that we apply a meat to preserve it when you see it in the supermarket. So there's this one chemical called BHT, which we apply a meat to stop this rapid oxidizing chain reaction from happening. But in terms of what we should do to Lady Gaga or to our own meat dress, is we should probably add some antioxidants. The colour change of meat is actually due to an oxidation event. There's a major protein in striated muscle, which is what the cow beef that Gaga wore is primarily made of, called myoglobin. Myoglobin is used to like move the muscles, so it's really, really essential. It's really prevalent in the muscle, and when it undergoes oxidation, it turns into mitomyoglobin, and mitomyoglobin is brown, and that's what causes the brown colour of the meat. So we need to prevent that from happening, because that is one of the main reasons that people reject meat, people don't want to eat the meat, people think the meat is spoiled, is because of this brown colour. And one of the main purposes of synthetic antioxidants that meat companies apply is to preserve this red colour. Red, juicy meat is appetizing, brown, mushy meat, not so good. So what are some antioxidants that we can put on? I've obviously mentioned that there is synthetic antioxidants like BHT, which are widely used, but there is more and more a move against these kind of synthetic antioxidants, and that is because they have been linked to dangers to human health, like in cancer. So they're looking at natural antioxidants, and one paper I found suggested that things like licorice, a lot of spices, sage, cloves, they all have natural antioxidants in them, and that's what's great about plants. I'm a plant scientist, I love plants. But one good thing about plants is they are chemical factories. They produce so many chemicals, so many volatile chemicals. They are so well adapted to being little chemical factories, and they produce antioxidants. Maybe we should wrap Gaga in a vacuum seal to prevent oxygen or oxidizing agents from entering Gaga, and in the same process we should also pack Gaga with some plants and natural antioxidants to prevent that oxidation event turning into that runaway cycle of the Love Island couple splitting up because someone's turned their head in Casa Amor. The third thing that causes meat to spoil, apart from autolysis and oxidation, is bacteria. That's the first thing that people would think of why the meat's spoiled. They think, oh, it's covered in bacteria, yeast, fungi. And yeah, that is one of the main reasons, but as we've discussed, it's not the only reason. So bacteria produce a lot of volatile compounds when they're digesting the meat, and this is one of the reasons for the smell of decomposing meat. But the smell can also be produced from the previous two reasons for decomposition that we've just discussed. So how do bacteria get onto the meat? Well, that can happen at any stage of the meat process, from when the animal is alive to when it's slaughtered to when it's packed to when it's presented on the shelf to when it's cooked. So at every single stage of that process, we need to make sure that the meat is kept cold. Again, bacteria are sensitive to temperature, and we need to make sure that we may be doing the slaughtering process in the most sterile way possible if we want our meat dress to last as long as possible. One of the reasons that we actually add salt to meat is because some of the main colonizing bacteria of meat are sensitive to salt. And by adding salt, we put bacteria under osmotic stress, so it's harder to keep the water balance correct because the salt like shrinks them up. Like, you know, if you eat too much salt, your lips feel weird, and like that's all to do with osmosis and water. We can think of bacteria colonizing meat as the dog pile on Gaga's best album, Art Pop, because bacteria don't work in isolation. Often they can work together as what was called in one paper a metabiotic spoilage association. Wow, big words. But what that basically means is the bacteria each digesting one part of the meat, or they're helping each other to digest together, because some of the molecules in meat are obviously really complex, so teamwork makes the dream work. The more bacterial species, the easier it becomes. Obviously, they are still competing with each other. They are different species, but they all can have specialisms. Traditionally, drying, smoking, fermentation, canning were traditional methods to prevent bacterial growth. But more recently, cooling, freezing, chemical preservation is the way forward for preventing bacterial decomposition. If we kept Gaga's meat dress at below -55, which is frozen solid, we could prevent all microbial growth. But a temperature of around 12 degrees would suffice. So overall, what we need to consider is autolysis, enzymes, oxidation, the Love Island problem, runaway free radicals without a paired electron. And finally, we need to consider bacteria. So, what would be the optimal way to wear a meat dress? Salt, antioxidants. Cold temperatures is always going to help. The right cut of meat, strong proteins in our tissue, maybe wearing some perfume. I think that's everything I'm going to talk about in this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the history of the meat dress and maybe learned a little bit about decomposition and how to keep your meat fresh. I'll be back very soon, I imagine, with another episode combining pop culture and biology. And I think I'll have some guests pretty soon where I can not just talk to myself, and I can bore someone else with all my biological ramblings. But thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify, please, I don't know, comment, like, subscribe down below.
Carry a